The scent of him lingered in my chambers. I had allowed him too close. Worse, he had touched me, and I had not struck him down. Instead, my body had betrayed me, responding in ways no suitor, no warrior, no consort ever had. A mere human had unsettled me, left me wanting. I did not allow myself to want. Standing before the towering crystal window of my throne room, I clenched my fingers into a fist, my claws pressing against my palm. My twin hearts drummed an uneven rhythm, the aftershock of his presence still trembling through me. Humans were a lesser species, fragile, undisciplined, ruled by sentiment rather than logic. They should have held no power over me, and yet he did. The doors behind me slid open with a hush of pressurized air. I did not turn. I already knew who it was. I had summoned him, after all. Your Majesty. His voice was smooth, unbowed. He should have been afraid. The last diplomat who defied me had been removed from my sight permanently. But Ronan Vale was different. He was bold, reckless, infuriating, and he had touched me. I inhaled sharply, catching the barest trace of his scent, earth and heat, something wholly human, yet maddeningly intoxicating. My muscles tightened. "You have been careless, human," I murmured, my voice like silk over steel. He stepped closer, and I allowed it. I felt his presence like a pulse against my skin, an impossible pull. He had no right to affect me this way. "I only did what you allowed," he said, his tone measured, but edged with something deeper. "If you didn't want me to touch you, you wouldn't have let me." My claws flexed, arrogant, presumptuous. "Right." I turned at last, meeting his gaze. Human eyes were simple, one color, no shifting luminance, no dual focus like mine. But his burned with something raw, something dangerous. "You presume too much," I said. "You are not special, human." His lips curved. "Then why did you call me back?" My twin hearts pounded. He had learned too quickly. That should have concerned me. Instead, it thrilled me. I did not answer, stepping toward him instead, closing the space between us until only a breath remained. He did not retreat. Foolish man. I lifted a hand, not quite touching him. His skin was warm as I remembered. My kind ran colder. The contrast had been distracting. I should have pulled away. Instead, I traced a single claw just above his pulse point, never making contact. His breath hitched. My own remained steady, though I felt an unfamiliar tightness in my chest. Humans have an odd way of tempting fate, I mused. You are fragile, easily broken. And yet, he murmured, I seem to have survived touching you. Barely. Should have dismissed him. I should have sent him away, banished him from my presence before he dismantled me further. But instead I let the moment stretch, let the silence between us tighten like a coiled wire. What do you want from me, Ronan? I asked at last. His gaze flickered, down to my lips, then back to my eyes. He was not foolish enough to act on whatever impulse had just flared through him, but he wanted to. I could feel it in the air between us. I don't think you want me to answer that, Your Majesty, he said. A slow, dangerous smile curved my lips. He was wrong. I did want him to answer, because then, perhaps, I could justify what I wanted in return. I stepped back, breaking the moment before it unraveled me completely. You will not touch me again, I said, though the words tasted like a lie. He tilted his head, studying me like he saw through every layer of my control. If that's what you want, it should have been. Leave, I commanded, before I changed my mind. He hesitated, just for a breath. And then he turned and left me standing there, twin hearts pounding, my skin still tingling with the ghost of his touch. I had allowed him too close, and I already knew I would do it again. I should not have called him back. And yet, as I sat upon my throne, my mind drifted to the human who had dared touch me. My skin still tingled with the memory, an infuriating echo of something I did not understand, something I refused to name. Ronan Vale, a diplomat, a soldier. A man who did not lower his eyes in my presence. No other being in this galaxy would dare stand before me unbowed. Yet he had. And worse, I had let him. Your Majesty. I did not turn as my advisor Zirin entered the chamber. His voice was even, but I knew him well enough to hear the tension beneath it. You disapprove, I murmured, already knowing what he would say. Zirin, ever composed, clasped his hands behind his back. I merely observe, my queen. Then observe in silence. He did not obey immediately, another mistake I allowed too often. The human lingers, Zirin continued. Others have noticed. I exhaled slowly. Let them notice. There was a pause. Then, more carefully, he said, That is not like you. No, it was not. I ruled with certainty, with control. I did not indulge. But Ronan Vale was something else, something that pressed against the boundaries of my restraint. He does not matter, I said, more to myself than to Zirin. His presence is temporary. Another pause, this one longer. You summoned him again, Zirin said. It was not a question. I clenched my jaw. Yes, because despite my own warnings, I had not been able to resist. The hunger, the pull, had only grown, and now I would confront it. Zirin, ever the dutiful advisor, did not press further. He merely inclined his head and stepped aside as the chamber doors hissed open. Ronan entered. He had the audacity to look unsurprised. You called for me, Your Majesty. His voice was smooth, measured, confident. I should have punished that confidence. Instead, I watched the way he carried himself, the way his broad shoulders squared as if he belonged here. He did not bow. He did not lower his gaze. He stood before me as an equal. And something in me liked it. I have decided something, I said, my voice betraying none of the storm within me. He raised a brow. And what is that? I rose from my throne, descending the short steps until we stood mere breaths apart. I saw the flicker of something in his eyes, anticipation, curiosity, desire, before he mastered it. You will prove yourself, I said. His lips curved, as if he had already known this was coming. And how do I do that? You speak as though you know me, I murmured. As though you understand what I am. I understand what you want, he said. Bold as ever, my twin hearts hammered, a dangerous man, a reckless man, my undoing. I lifted a hand, trailing a single claw along the air between us, just shy of touching his skin. He did not flinch. He never did. You claim to know my desires? I asked, letting my voice drop to something lower, silkier. His breath hitched, just slightly, but I caught it. He was not as unaffected as he pretended to be. I know you haven't sent me away, he murmured. That has to mean something. I tilted my head. Or perhaps I am merely entertained by your foolishness. His lips twitched. Perhaps. Silence stretched between us, thick and charged. I could hear the steady beat of his singular human heart, so slow compared to my own. His warmth radiated between us, drawing me forward against my own will. I should have dismissed him. I should have told him to leave and never return. But I had given myself a taste of something forbidden. And now, I was starving for more. You will accompany me, I said, stepping back before I lost my resolve. Ronan frowned slightly. Accompany you where? To the sanctum of Veyran, I said, the heart of my empire. His brows rose, surprise flickering across his features. He knew what I was offering. No human had ever set foot in the sanctum. "This is a test?" he asked. I smirked. "Everything with me is a test." He exhaled through his nose, a small chuckle escaping. "And what happens if I fail?" I leaned in slightly, letting my voice ghost over his ear. "You will not live long enough to regret it." His grin was slow, daring. "Then I suppose I better not fail." I turned away before I could betray myself further. "We leave at dawn." I heard him shift behind me, but he did not speak. He only watched, his gaze pressing into me like a physical touch. And then, after a long pause, he said, "You keep pulling me closer." I froze. His voice was quiet now, no longer teasing, just honest. "You could have ended this, but you didn't." I clenched my jaw. "Do not mistake curiosity for weakness, human." "I don't," he said, "but I wonder if you do." His words struck deeper than I liked. I turned, ready to cut him, down with a glare. But he was already walking away, leaving me standing there burning. I should not have called him back, and yet I already knew I would do it again. I had made a mistake. Not by bringing Ronan Vale with me to the sanctum of Veyran. That decision had been calculated. A test, an opportunity to remind myself of my control. No, my mistake was far more dangerous. I had begun to enjoy his presence. The realization unsettled me as I stood before the massive arched windows of my private chamber within the sanctum. The twin moons of my homeworld cast silver light across the room, illuminating the intricate carvings along the walls, markings of past rulers, their reigns long ended. Someday my name would be etched there as well. A queen remembered not for weakness, but for power. And yet tonight my mind was not on my legacy. It was on the human I had foolishly brought to my side. "You summon me." His voice, smooth, assured, cut through my thoughts. I turned slowly, finding him standing just beyond the threshold of my chamber. His presence filled the space as if it had always belonged here, a notion I should have rejected. "I did," I admitted. He stepped forward, unhurried, his gaze steady on mine. He was dressed differently than before, no longer in his human military uniform, but in a fitted tunic and dark trousers, garments gifted to him by my attendants. He had accepted them without protest, though I had noticed the way his fingers brushed against the fabric as if memorizing its texture. A small thing, a human thing. "Should I be concerned?" he asked, that ever-present hint of amusement in his tone. "You should always be concerned," I replied. He stopped a mere breath away, his head tilting as he studied me. "And yet, you keep calling me back." I did, and I had not yet decided whether it was a weakness or something far more dangerous. I lifted my chin. "You are here to learn, to understand my world, my rule. If you cannot, you are of no use to me." He smirked. "Is that what you tell yourself?" A slow pulse of heat rolled through me, an irritation I refused to acknowledge. "You enjoy provoking me." "I enjoy the way you react," he corrected, voice dipping lower. I should have struck him for such arrogance. Instead, I held his gaze, feeling the slow, inevitable pull between us tighten like a wire. I exhaled sharply. "You will accompany me to the ritual chamber tomorrow." A flicker of curiosity crossed his face. "Ritual?" I stepped away, needing distance. "A renewal of sovereignty. A queen must reaffirm her rule before the council. It is tradition." His gaze didn't waver. "And why do you want me there?" I hesitated. The truth was dangerous. The truth was something I barely understood myself. "Because you are human," I said at last. "And humans are unpredictable." His lips curved, as if he saw through my words. "That's not the real reason." I turned sharply. Do not presume to know my mind. His smirk softened, just slightly. I don't have to. I just know you haven't sent me away. Damn him. I moved before I could think better of it, closing the space between us once more. He stiffened, caught off guard, but did not step back. Tell me, Ronan Vale, I murmured. Do you truly believe you have any power in this arrangement? He held my gaze, his breath steady despite the closeness. I think, he said slowly, that you're not as indifferent as you pretend to be. My claws flexed at my sides. I should have cut his words from his lips, should have punished him for his insolence. Instead, I reached out, trailing the tips of my fingers along his jaw, just barely skimming his skin. His pulse jumped beneath my touch. A reaction, a surrender. A slow, dangerous smile curved my lips. Be careful, human, I whispered. You are playing a game you cannot win. His breath was uneven now, but his voice remained steady. And yet you keep letting me play. The hunger in me stirred again, deep and insatiable. He was right, and that should have terrified me. Instead, it thrilled me. I let my hand fall away, stepping back. Do not make me regret bringing you here. His eyes darkened, but he nodded once. Understood. I watched as he turned, exiting the chamber without another word. And yet, long after he was gone, I could still feel him, his presence, his scent, the warmth of his skin beneath my touch. I had made a mistake, and I already knew I would make it again. The ritual chamber was silent, save for the low hum of the energy conduits that lined its circular walls. The air smelled of burning incense, thick with the scent of zevran bark, a rare wood known to heighten the senses. The chamber itself was ancient, its walls carved with the histories of my predecessors, their triumphs, their failures. And now I stood in the center of it, with Ronan Vale at my side. A mistake, but one I refused to undo. You don't look nervous, he murmured. Beside me, I didn't turn to him. I do not fear rituals. No, he said, his voice low, almost teasing. But you don't like being questioned. I narrowed my eyes, forcing myself to remain still. He was observant, far too perceptive for a human, for a male who should have known his place. The chamber doors hissed open. The High Council entered, their ceremonial robes flowing behind them like dark shadows. At their head was Elith Kor, the eldest among them, her piercing violet eyes assessing me with the weight of generations. The moment she saw Ronan, her gaze darkened. I expected this. I welcomed it. Queen Ashera, Elith said, her voice steady, commanding. You have summoned us to reaffirm your sovereignty, and yet you bring a human into our most sacred chamber. Ronan, to his credit, remained still. He did not bow. He did not flinch. Good. I lifted my chin. He is here. By my command. Elith's sharp gaze flickered between us, searching for weakness. You challenge tradition. I allowed myself a slow smile. That is what queens do. A murmur rippled through the council members. Elith did not react. Then let us begin. I stepped forward, ignoring the weight of their judgment. The ritual was simple. A reaffirmation of my rule, a demonstration of my unchallenged strength. I placed my hands on the stone altar, feeling the cold press of the sacred metal embedded within. The energy pulsed beneath my palms, reacting to my presence, recognizing my right to reign. Then, the final step, the challenge. Elith's voice rang out. By the ancient laws, a queen must be unyielding. She must stand above all, her will unbroken. I exhaled slowly, already knowing what was coming. A challenger may step forward to test her, Elith declared. Silence. I waited, my body coiled, my twin hearts beating in perfect rhythm, No one would dare challenge me. But then, Ronan Vale moved. A single step forward. A statement. A provocation. The chamber froze. Elith's lips pressed into a thin line. The human seeks to test you. I turned my head slightly, my gaze locking onto his. Do you? A slow, infuriating smirk touched his lips. Isn't that why you brought me here? Heat flared in my chest, not anger. Not entirely. The council watched, their gazes sharp, waiting. To deny a challenge was to show weakness. To allow it was to risk losing control. Ronan knew this, and he was forcing my hand. Very well, I said, my voice smooth as a blade. You wish to test me, human? Then step forward. A flicker of something crossed his face, something darker, something hungry. But he did not hesitate. He moved to stand before me, his stance steady, his gaze unwavering. The test is one of will, Elith reminded us. It is not a contest of strength, but of control. The challenger must break the queen's focus, must force her to yield. Ronan's eyes gleamed with something dangerous. Understood. The ritual began. I kept my hands on the altar, steady, unmoving. The energy surged through me, binding me to my throne, to my power. It was an extension of my will, a direct connection to the empire itself. Ronan moved closer. I know something about you now, he murmured, his voice just low enough for only me to hear. I did not react. He took another step. His heat pressed against me, his breath ghosting along my cheek. You pretend you're untouchable, he continued. But I see the way you react when I'm near. A shiver ran through me before I could stop it. Damn him. You like control, he said, voice velvet smooth. But you also like the fight. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to remain still. He was pushing, pressing, testing the edges of my restraint. Then, the final blow. He touched me. A single brush of his fingers along my arm. Soft, deliberate. My twin hearts slammed against my ribs. The energy wavered. Ronan exhaled a quiet laugh. There it is, I snapped. My hand shot out, fingers curling around his throat, pushing him back against the stone pillar behind him. The chamber gasped, but I barely heard it. Ronan's breathing was steady, even as my claws pressed against his skin. His pulse hammered beneath my grip, but he did not struggle. He only smiled. You lost focus, he murmured. My grip tightened. You overstep. Do I? His hands came up, slow, careful, brushing against mine. Or did I just prove my point? He was too close, too warm. The scent of him filled my senses, not fear, never fear. I could end this now, push him away, prove my dominance. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned in, my voice a whisper against his lips. You play a dangerous game, human. His breath hitched, just barely. And yet, you haven't stopped me. The hunger inside me roared. I released him abruptly, stepping back, forcing air between us. My control was fraying. I could feel it slipping, unraveling. Ronan exhaled, his throat bobbing where my hand had just been. I take it I passed the test. I narrowed my eyes. You survived it. Elith's voice cut through the tension. The queen remains unchallenged. The ritual is complete. The council murmured their approval, but I barely heard them. Ronan was watching me with something new in his gaze, something dangerous, and worse. I was watching him the same way. I had won. I stood triumphant, unchallenged, the ritual complete. The High Council bowed their heads in reluctant acknowledgement, the energy of the throne chamber settling back into stillness. Yet, as I turned to leave, I felt his gaze burning into my spine. Ronan Vale had dared to test me. He had pushed, provoked, played with fire, and he had survived it. That should have satisfied him. It should have satisfied me, but it did not. I swept past him, my robes trailing behind me in a rush of silk and shadow, my twin hearts thundering, in ways they should not. He did not follow immediately. Good. I needed space. I needed control. The palace corridors stretched before me, lined with pillars of iridescent stone, the soft glow of embedded starlight pulsing beneath my fingertips as I brushed against them. Every inch of this place was mine. Every life that walked these halls answered to me. And yet, he had stolen my focus. Damn him. I made my way toward my private chambers, ignoring the wary gazes of my attendants. They had witnessed the ritual. They had seen me hesitate. They had seen me react. No, I would not allow them to question my strength. By the time I reached my chamber doors, my composure had returned. The moment they shut behind me, the silence was absolute. I exhaled slowly, pressing my hands against the cool stone walls. Control, I would find it again. I had to. But then, a voice, low and rough, cut through the silence. "You ran." I turned sharply. Ronan Vale leaned against the far wall, arms crossed, the smirk on his lips infuriatingly casual. His presence here was an offense. A human should not have dared to enter my private sanctuary without summons, but this one had. He always did. "I do not run," I said coldly. "No?" He pushed off the wall, moving closer. Slow, deliberate. "Then what do you call leaving the moment the ritual ended?" I forced myself to remain still, unmoved. I had no reason to stay. His eyes flickered with something sharp, something knowing. "You almost lost," he murmured. A growl rose in my throat. "I did not." "No," he agreed. "But I saw it. I felt it." He took another step, close enough that I could see the pulse at his throat, steady, strong. "I touched you," he continued, voice lower now, almost taunting. "And for a moment, you let it happen." The air between us shifted. Tension, heavy and electric. I should have struck him down for his arrogance. I should have called the guards, had him removed, reminded him of his place. But I did not move. Ronan watched me, waiting, testing me again. He was a foolish creature, but I was the fool for allowing this game to continue. "You think too highly of yourself," I said at last, my voice smooth, controlled. "You are nothing more than a human, a temporary amusement." I expected anger, resentment, some form of wounded pride, but instead, he smiled. It was not a smirk this time, not arrogance, something deeper. "You keep telling yourself that," he said softly. And then before I could stop him, before I could even react, he reached for me. Not forcefully, not as a challenge, but as a promise. The back of his fingers brushed along my jaw, slow, feather-light, a whisper of a touch, and my entire body betrayed me. Heat coiled low in my stomach. My twin hearts skipped, then pounded. Ronan's fingers lingered, his eyes watching mine as if daring me to pull away. I should have. Instead, I stood there, frozen, my breath uneven for the first time in years. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. I opened my mouth. The words did not come. His fingers slid lower, tracing the line of my throat, his touch impossibly gentle. Not submission, not defiance. Something worse. Understanding. He knew what he was doing to me, and I hated him for it. "I am your queen," I whispered, but the words lacked the venom they should have held. Ronan leaned in, his breath brushing against my skin. "And yet," he murmured, his lips just above my pulse, "you're letting me touch you." A shudder rippled through me. This was wrong. This was dangerous. But as his fingers traced lower, as his warmth pressed closer, I knew something with terrifying certainty. I did not want him to stop. The weight of his touch lingered long after he pulled away. I should have commanded him to leave. I should have ended this. But we both knew the truth. I wouldn't. Ronan Vale had unraveled something within me. A part of myself I had long buried beneath my title, my power, my pride. He had torn through my defenses with nothing more than his presence, his defiance, and his patience, a human, a mere human. He stepped back, just enough to give me space, but not enough to break the tension that bound us. His restraint was a weapon of its own. I lifted my chin, willing my voice to be steady. You have gone too far. His lips twitched in something. That was not quite a smirk, not quite a victory. Have I? My twin hearts betrayed me, their rhythm a wild staccato against my ribs. He had asked the question, as if he already knew the answer, as if he could hear it beating in my chest. Silence stretched between us, thick with unsaid words. I could still feel the ghost of his fingers along my skin. I could still feel the temptation. I turned away, walking toward the balcony, the open sky beyond it stretching into infinity. Stars burned in the distance, cold and ancient, watching as they always had. Watching as I fought against myself. His footsteps followed, unhurried. You're afraid, he said. I stilled. It was not a question, not an accusation, a truth. A truth I could not bring myself to deny. I had never feared war. I had never feared death. I had ruled with certainty, with unyielding strength. But this, the way his presence dismantled the walls I had spent a lifetime building, the way he made me crave something more, something dangerous, that terrified me. I turned to face him, my breath uneven. You speak as if you understand me, human. Ronan studied me, his gaze sharp, unwavering, unafraid. I do, he said simply. Arrogant, reckless, honest. And I hated that I believed him. My voice dropped to something close to a whisper. You think you can claim me? His eyes darkened, but his answer came slow, deliberate. No, he murmured, but I think you want to be claimed. The words hit me harder than they should have, because he was right. For the first time in my life, I was not standing above someone. I was not holding power over them. I was standing before an equal, and I wanted him to pull me closer. I should have walked away. But instead, I stepped forward. It was the smallest movement, but I saw the shift in his expression, the quiet satisfaction, the understanding that I was no longer fighting this, no longer fighting him. You are insufferable, I whispered. His smile was slow, knowing. And yet, you're still standing here. I exhaled sharply, tilting my head. I could have you executed for your arrogance. Ronan lifted a brow. But you won't. I let the silence speak for itself. Then, before I could think better of it, before I could remind myself of all the reasons this was a mistake, I closed the distance. My hand found his jaw, my fingers threading through the roughness of his stubble. His breath hitched, just for a second, before his hands found my waist. Firm, grounding, and then I kissed him. It was not gentle. It was not hesitant. It was a surrender and a challenge all at once. Ronan responded in kind, his grip tightening, pulling me closer, deepening the kiss with a certainty that sent fire racing through my veins. I had ruled 1,000 battles. I had conquered entire worlds. But in this moment, he was the only thing I wanted to claim. When we finally parted, his forehead rested against mine, his breath warm against my lips. I warned you, he murmured, his voice rough. I smirked, my fingers trailing along the collar of his shirt. And I ignored it. A soft chuckle. I know. I stepped back, composing myself. The fire between us had not dimmed. It had only just begun to burn. I met his gaze, my voice steady once more. If you stay, you will be mine. Ronan held my stare, unshaken, unyielding. I already am. And this time, I did not fight it. The queen had finally met her match.